Okay, welcome back. So today, what we were suggested to talk about was, well, in this case it was favorite Ace Attorney character, but I feel like that might be a bit too narrow. So how about let's talk, about characters in general, eh? Let's see here. I think there's, different ways a character can be good, Because, character to be good or to be a favorite doesn't have to have a likable personality, And then, it really is a difficult topic, to bring up. But hey, you know what, screw it, let's just do the favorite Ace Attorney character first, and then we can do everything else after that, eh? So, favorite Ace Attorney character, eh? I mean, I think I'd probably have to say Gumshoe. I don't know, man. I like someone, they're a bit of a klutz, stuff like that, but their heart's in the right place, Like, there's a difference between malicious, just doing something maliciously, or if you do it out of ignorance, right? And then he does care about the people close to him as well. Even willing to, bend a few rules here and there to get the best outcome. But yeah, I mean, can't really say much more about that, eh? I think, like, sometimes if a character's writing is bad, even if their personality is fine, they can still come off as mediocre. Like, if you're like in, let's say, reading dialogue off for a character, right? And it's all heckin' broken, wonky, wrong words here and there. I think the character would be, a bit less appealing. Well, depends, maybe if it's a character stick or whatever, right? The kind of like broken English, stuff like that. Then maybe it could be endearing, but, it's dependent on the circumstances, eh? Ace Attorney is a bit different with the main character, because, I know, like, let's say, for instance, Metro or stuff like that, right? When the character, or when your playable character doesn't really talk, you don't really get any great attachment to them. Because it's more like you're them, right, in the game. So you don't really feel, any attachment to them, but rather their allies and who they're around. Now, of course, some games, have the main character talking, but I don't know, you kind of forget it. Like, they aren't talking all the time, or you kind of think of that as, like the inner thoughts, stuff like that, right? I don't know, I just find it a bit harder. Like, let's say BioShock as well, right? You don't really have that much, well, you do have some information about the character you play, right? But their actions feel more like your own actions, so it's kind of hard to find the, appeal in the characters. While if you're, you see, oh man. Yeah, the thing. If you see like another character from basically third person view, right? You see their actions, you see how they act. Definitely can become more likable, right? And then you also have a face to the person you're seeing, right? Then again, like, even, for instance, even Nier, right? I guess Nier Automata, you have kind of time to where they actually show the personality, right? I feel like in a lot of games, like, sorry about all the lights, but they'll kind of talk, but it's more like just to progress the story rather than show their personality. Like, sometimes their actions show personality, right? But compared to other characters, it's really not that prominent, like as I was saying. So, like, BioShock, you see him protecting the little sister, stuff like that, or you can do some other stuff as well, right? Either or, right? And that'll, I don't know, if they have multiple stories, right, or multiple ways they can act, you don't really know which is the right one. Now, if a character, like I said, it's like third person, or you're just viewing them, then you know. But even, I guess, even Nier, you're playing, you know, the guy to save his sister, right? Well, no, you just can't really... If you're playing a character for so long, you kind of feel like you're more like them, right? So then you can't really get too much of a fondness for him. I guess you could be like, oh yeah, cool guy or whatever. But as a lot of the actions are dependent on your own inputs and stuff like that, it is, you know, harder. It'd definitely be like, oh yeah, that's my favorite character straight out. Now, there are times where that can change. Visual novels, stuff like that, are kind of dependent, you know. Because if we bring up something like Ace Attorney, right? Ace Attorney, you don't really have options to change the dialogue. You ask questions, and you see kind of Phoenix's personality, right? It's not really something you can control. You can ask questions, sure. You can examine stuff, sure. But you don't really have many options to change what he says, right? Well, any of that won't lead to failure, right? But if you're like doing an actual visual novel where each character, where you're basically the player character, right? And you can say whatever you want, you know, then you can't really have too much of a likability for the main character, right? Because normally, you know, sorry about that, the main character can act either, you know, evil or good, right? Benign or malevolent. Yeah. Not too sure if that's the right wording, but we'll roll with that, eh? We'll roll with that. Let's see here, though. But I feel like the only time it's pretty different is Nier Automata, you know. I don't know, they just feel different than Nier Replicant somehow. Like the characters felt more real, more complex, right? While complexity doesn't necessarily mean a character is good or likable, I think having a character that's complex can definitely make them more... Well, you can be more empathetic towards them, and you can relate more to them. And you can, you know, make them seem more real, right? I feel like in, you know, like Nier Replicant, the player character, right, the brother we were playing as, felt like fairly one-dimensional. No, want to save his sister. Want to save his sister. Goody two-shoes. Basically how it is, right? Well, you go to like Nier Automata, stuff like that. You kind of see their personality in, you know, when they're doing communications or talking to each other, right? That's a different thing. I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like Nier Replicant, their personality wasn't really unique enough. It kind of like, when you're playing it, you kind of forget your character, you know? While if you're playing, like, you know, Nier Automata, right? You see their interactions, yeah, the interactions just feel more natural. And they feel less like they're trying to advance the plot and more like they're trying to flesh out character traits and stuff like that, right? Like, I feel a lot of the characters there can be pretty good. Like, I know a lot of people like 2B, right? 2B, 9S, they seem pretty fleshed out. Even, man. Even the Robot Village, I know it starts with a P. Patricia. Man, this is gonna make me search up, ain't it? I'm gonna search it up because I can, yeah. Because, you know, sometimes it's hard to remember. You like try to remember it all. Let's see here. There's 2B, nah. You know, I have a feeling I'm not gonna find it here. It's in your Automata, right? Yeah. Well, anyways, I guess we can continue talking while we're here. Shouldn't be that bad. But yeah, when a character... actually Emil, eh? Guess Emil... I don't know. I feel like characters can be likable, even with a limited screen time, but if you want a character to usually be the favorite, for at least a lot of people, they need to have quite a bit of it. So like, as I said with Nier Automata, you deal with 2B, 9S, stuff like that fairly darn often, you know. At least that's how I think about it. If you interact with him enough, you can learn more about him. Now, of course, that can change if you, like, spend time looking at all the lore, right? But usually at a glance, right, just dealing with characters right away. You're just kind of like, oh yeah, this character's good. Stuff like that, you know. Like, for instance, Code Vein, right? Code Vein. Yeah, your player character, fairly silent, you know. Few dialogue here and there. Didn't really feel like much. And then, like, you know, I don't know, I feel like when you're moving the character a lot of the time, I guess it's dependent on how it's handled, right? Like, if it was 2B, stuff like that, you know, I feel more fleshed out. Well, I guess the key thing is whether a character feels more like a self-insert, you know. Like, if you can insert yourself into the character, like Metro, right? Like Artyom, right? Artyom never talking, but you can do it through actions, but the actions are like all your own, so it doesn't really feel unique, or like they're a unique character. Supposedly they're a unique character and act certain ways, right? But I don't know, you just don't really see it that much. The only thing in Metro that you saw was the notes, and they were basically just plot points, eh? Like, oh, we went to here, oh, we did this, oh, we're finally at this point now. You know what I mean? Okay, yeah. See the robot village. Here we go. Pascal, there we go. But yeah, even like smaller characters, I guess, like Pascal, right? They have a lot of... At least in Nier Automata, I felt like they had a lot of character. Now, character development. That's a bit of a problem. That's not so much, but, you know... just how it is. Let's see, another game. I guess we can do like Select Cat, for example, right? I mean, sure, you get like a few pictures showing their personality, right? The only one that's different is really Artificer, right? With flashbacks and stuff like that, so you kind of get their character. But I don't know if it's easier to empathize with a character who doesn't speak, or less. I mean, in my opinion now, I'd assume it's less. You can't really get as attached to a character that's just kind of silent. I mean, you can see it through actions and stuff like that, right? But then it's a lot harder to do, you know. To express a character when you can't use words, it's definitely a lot more effort to do. To make like a character who's mute, stuff like that, right? To make them more empathetic, you can't go through actions, right? Then I just, you know, it just takes a lot more time to flesh out their personality, right? Like a lot of how a person speaks can show their demeanor or how they act, right? Like if they're like talking super quick, stuff like that, you know, they're more like a nervous or excited type, right? A bit jumpity, right? They're more slow, methodical. Kind of shows in accents and stuff like that as well. Wording that they use, it can show a lot about a character. That's actually why I think dialogue is fairly important for a character. Because if you mess up the dialogue, you can, well, fail what you were trying to portray to the audience, right? Or to the gamer, in that case. Because, like, you know, if you want, like, one-dimensional character, like, look at Doom, right? The Doom guy kills demons. That's basically all you know. Now, I'm probably going to be corrected that if you look at the story or whatever, you're going to see him act completely different or stuff like that, but that's really not the point. Like, if they don't really have many personal characteristics, you know, it's more like hard to find them appealing, you know. They seem too one-dimensional to be great. I think that's why a lot of the time, actually, villains can be found pretty favorably, depending on how they're written. Like, they can be fairly evil, right? But if you see their thought process and they seem like a deep character. Now, not just evil for no reason, but flawed. Doing stuff for certain reasons, be it revenge or stuff like that, if it's done properly. It can make a character a lot more appealing and you feel bad for him. Now, whether they're right or wrong. Usually it's wrong, right? But that's really not the point. Like, let's see, here's an example, eh? Here's an example, Fontaine, right? Fontaine, this is going to be a spoiler for Bioshock, but, Fontaine, the man who acted as, it was Atlas, right? Telling us what to do, right? You saw his manipulative behavior, stuff like that. But, you know, he just seemed evil for no reason. Now, I think he was more likable because he had a more in-depth plan, stuff like that, right? He wasn't like, oh, I'm just evil for the sake of being evil. It's more like, I want ambition. I want to take over the world now. Lofty goal, kind of generic, but added a bit more to his character than if he was like, oh, I want to destroy, I just want to, kind of hard to say, like, I'm just doing it because I can, you know. Or I'm doing it because, I didn't want Andrew Ryan to be in charge. Which I guess is partially true, right? He didn't want that. But it was more so the fact that he wanted power. It's definitely harder to make characters who are solely for power to be likable. You can make them better if they're more in depth, right? You can make them better. But whether they're likable or not, it's still dependent. But then again, to me, a likable character does not mean the character itself has to be likable, you know? You can like how they act. Like, let's say they're a super bad guy, but they joke all the time, like, I never played Fallout, but I heard, like, the Fallout, there was, like, some crazy dude or whatever with a mask, I think. Perfect whatever, right? People really liked him. He may have been evil, might have been evil stuff, but they fleshed out the character enough and gave him his own personality enough to where he's a lot more likable. And I guess you can kind of relate that to Fontaine as well. To where, you know, doing all that stuff, all that controlling, it does make him a bit more fleshed out, a bit more interesting, right? And a character who's more interesting can just, you know, more likely to be likable. If you have a character who doesn't really act, fairly one-dimensional, like, oh, here's a quest, do this because I need help, and you don't really learn about him, you're not really gonna like him. Well, unless you just really like the character design, and then you're like, ah, I like this character solely because of character design. Now, some are like that, you know. Some people definitely like a character, not because how they act or how they are, but rather how the character looks, and, you know, they form whatever headcanon they want. Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, hey. So I guess, make a good character, right? You wanna make them interesting. Character design can play a pretty important role as well. Because like I say, there's two characters both with interesting backstories, interesting personalities, right? That are level with each other. Depending on how they look, one might be above the other, right? Or how they act. So I think for a character to be likable, or to like one, it's a mixture of the character design, the actions of the character, the dialogue of the character, and, well, technically dialogue is part of the personality, right? But I guess that's more so dialogue would be how they represent themselves to the individual, or to the person playing the game, right? The audience. At least that's what I think, hey? Like, if you want fleshed out characters, right? Look at, like, Limbus Company, stuff like that. To where, like, each character gets their own, you know, chapter. To flesh out the character. They definitely seem more, you know, three-dimensional. And I think that makes people more fond of them. And different people get attached to different ones. Because they're all, well, some definitely, I feel like, have more personality than others. Especially right now. Like Marcellus, who's just kind of super monotone. He has his moments, but generally fairly two-dimensional or one-dimensional. But that'll probably change whenever his chapter comes about. Or if I read the books, then I'd probably know more. But yeah, at least that's what I think. Well, we ran to 20 minutes here, so guess I will say peace out and have a good one. If you have any suggestions on what to talk about, do that. Put it in the comments down below. Peace out, have a good one. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.